Okay, so the theme for this lecture is fact or fiction: TQM's need for governance and leadership. Introduction. Okay, the aim and objective for the lecture, what I want to talk about, is first management fashions. Using this for defining what is total quality management, TQM. Looking at three particular perspectives of TQM called business process management, quality management systems, and organizational quality culture. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about TQM implementation challenges, and then move on to the central topic, namely governance and leadership. And at the end, we're going to present work that Gary and I have been doing. Gary presented at a conference earlier this year called Critical Systems Intervention, CSI, that we use for implementing total quality management. So let's talk about fads and fashions of quality management and why this matters. Well, there has been studies of fads and fashions in management theory is something that has been studied a lot, and it also follows this particular this pattern. Rapid popularity is caused by references in popular press. Long periods of popularity and decline are caused by references in academic press. So what we see in the case of quality management, let's look at, for instance, total quality management, which was very popular in the 1980s and then got slightly less popular, at least in the popular press, due to ISO 9000, Six Sigma, Lean, Agile, and so on. There was a period, a latency period, because total quality management had a very long history. Quality management had a very long history, back to the let's say about 100 years of history. Then suddenly something happened, and that was, at that time, it was the competition from Japan that Americans and Europe in general were experiencing, and they thought that the Japanese were more focused on quality than the rest of the world. So that triggered this interest in quality management, and that was also when the term total quality management was created in 1985 at this rapid popularity surge, or at the beginning of the period of popularity, which lasted some years. And as I said, there was a period of decline, of what we perhaps in retrospect would rather say a redefinition of TQM in terms of ISO 9000, Six Sigma, Lean, Agile, and things like that. The point Cole makes here is that this is it may be unfortunate that things are like this, that things goes in fads and fashions, but that is also something that could be used, because each of these fads and fashions, it's difficult to grasp all the important aspects of quality management during one particular fad. But when they have when TQM was replaced by ISO 9001, then there was a more stronger focus on systems thinking, or the let's say the more functionalist aspects of systems thinking, but perhaps some of the statistical quality control aspects were forgotten, but those were redefined later on in Six Sigma and so on. So that's important. That's what Robert E. Cole is arguing, that these fashions are important. So now let's look at the latest fashion, which is agile. So how does this fashion suggest we should achieve long-term success? Well, it says it starts with process, because that is where agile comes from, and then it looks at we can't look only at process we have to look at how the processes are managed, how they are coordinated, managed. So that's why the agile in ISO 9000 becomes important, but the system is not sufficient. You have to also have a culture that supports the agile way of thinking. And then we get some literature on agile organization. But this agile, as I said, it's quite. If you look at something like the European Quality Award from the model that was defined, this is one from 2019, which is used for the current awards. Then agility is a part of the European Quality Award, meaning that it's in operational terms, agility is seen as part of total quality management. As I said, it's total quality management. Yes. So, in other words, is total quality management, is it dead or alive? As I said, there was, and this is quoted from Wikipedia. There was a fashion and popularity in the it started in the 1980s, and it peaked, here it says, in 1993. TQM as vaguely, and then TQM as a vaguely defined quality management approach was largely supplanted by the ISO 9000 collection of standards and their formal certification processes in the 1990s. Process interest in quality improvement under the TQM name was also faded as Jack Welch's success attracted attention to Six Sigma, and Toyota's success attracts attention to lean manufacturing. Although the three share many of the same tools, techniques, and significant portions of the same philosophy. And as I said on the previous slide, TQM lives on in various national quality awards around the globe. So TQM is no longer a fashion, one could say, but it lives on. However, as Gary and I discovered last year, when we tried to look more deeply into in the literature, in the academic literature, TQM did not peak in 1993. It's still on the rise and has been increasingly more popular, and ever since. And I assume this has to do with what I have said. That this TQM today is something different from the fashion in 40 years ago. So what is total quality management? So what is total quality management? A core definition of total quality management, TQM describes a management approach to long-term success through customer satisfaction. In TQM effort, all members of an organization participate in improving processes, products, services, and the culture in which they work. This is taken from the definition used by the American Society for Quality. And here we see a picture from the American branch of the Toyota manufacturing motor company, which is famous for its TQM approach, or lean, or whatever you choose to call it, the quality management approach. It was the model company, or still is to some extent the model company. So there are three things that are important here: customer focus, process design, and statistical process control. Those are the three aspects that defined total quality management in the beginning, and still are radically important for understanding what it is. Here we have the history of total quality management, TQM, also from the American Society for Quality, 2024. So it starts with the scientific management principles, or what Frederick Taylor did in industry from the 1880s, and then on here it says the 1920s, but I suppose that has to do because at that time scientific management was getting slightly more scientific, in the sense that statistical methods were being developed in Britain and elsewhere, and had a vast impact on how you could do scientific experiments in industry. Particularly important methods were those created by the statistical methods of the statistical quality control methods by Walter Shewhart. And in particular, he wrote a book in 1930, but this one, Statistical Method from the Viewpoint of Quality Control, from 1939, is particularly interesting from a philosophical point of view, because that is where the so-called Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle was defined, which we will return to later. Then we have in 1946, then which is an important year, at least from the viewpoint of this organization, American Society of Quality, because that is when it was formed. Interestingly, it was then called the American Association for Quality Control, because later it changed from quality control to changed from quality control to quality assurance to quality management, or just quality. But that was the year it was created, around the time of the war, and not so surprisingly perhaps, because it was important to create quality. At the time, there was a surge in the industry because of the war industry, and they needed to make sure that the things that weapons and the things created during war were all high quality. So that was important to create something like that. And then we had, after the war, in the 1950s, the total quality management, in the sense of the term total quality control. Total quality control was first used by Feinbaum in a book published in 1961, the Quality Control Handbook, which has come in numerous editions later, was first published in 1956. In the 1960s, the Japanese were starting to be the impact of the Japanese. The American quality experts went to Japan in the 1950s and contributed there, but in the 60s we're starting to see the impact of that. An important book from that period, reflecting on the period and the philosophy of Japanese quality control, is this "What is Total Quality Control" by Ishikawa from 1985. And then we have today, represented by quality standards and quality management systems. It says the most important book from that time is probably Out of the Crisis by Deming from 1982. And I also included one of the more recent books by Beckford, who is a British consultant and expert on quality management and cybernetic theories of management. So, but now let's look at the challenge from industrial management to sport management. So, in what way does this have any relevance for the people interested in sport management? Looking at Toyota and how they're producing cars and electronics and things like that, is essentially working with machines. How can that does that have any interest at all when you're looking at people and events and things like that? Well, yes, it does indeed. A very important, very strong relationship, as pointed out below here. In 1881, Frederick Taylor won the doubles championships of the United States Lawn Tennis Association, and a year later the doubles in the Young American CC Lawn Tennis Tournament. Later in his career, he developed a passion for golf, and in keeping with his love of experiment, this is the man behind who created the scientific management and did industrial experience, the birth of TQM. He attempted to make a putting green that was reliant on water below the surface rather than on natural rainfall. So why I'm mentioning this is that there is we could almost put the arrow the opposite way. That it started with Taylor applying. Well, he was working in an industry, of course, trying to improve performance quality by an experimental method, but he was also working with sport management, particularly on himself, how to improve his sports development using exactly the same methods. So next question is, how do we implement total quality management? And as I've mentioned previously, TQM, if we don't think of it as a fashion, but more like it is today, namely something that is characterized is the umbrella or the philosophy of quality of holistic quality management, company-wide quality management with a focus on customer focus, product design, and statistical process control. Then there are at least four very popular methods of introducing and implementing total quality management. Once again, this is based on the American Society of Quality Organization. So we have at the top here the two processes that focus on process, that is Six Sigma and lean manufacturing. We have ISO 9000 focusing on the quality management systems, which is another way of introducing and implementing total quality management. And we have the quality award approach, which is in Europe called the EFQM. EFQM model, the European Foundation for Quality Management model, business excellence model. So all these represent different ways of implementing total quality management. It does not mean that all with the particular characteristics. No method being perhaps more important than the other, but they represent different ways of doing it. So let's start with lean manufacturing. What used to be called before this term lean was introduced in 1987, they just called it just-in-time management, JIT. And this is the way of thinking about this is thinking about the marathon. What do you call this? Marathon running. You pass on this baton. So the idea here is that you have to. One man is waiting, and the other one, and it doesn't run until he gets the baton, and they run. So it's just in time to run or to produce. So this the man in the red and in the red vest, in the red dress, he is giving the product to the customer. Is the man in the yellow in a yellow vest. So the idea here that there are 5 principles to lean manufacturing, according to the book by Bournemouth and Jones, originally written in 1996, called Lean Thinking. And the first thing is to start with identify value. What is value? In this particular case, it is the baton we want, that is value, and we map the value stream, which is in this case just to live from this hand to that hand, and we create flow in the sense that they are running as quickly as possible and are ready to, and we establish pull in the sense that there is no, he cannot deliver this before there is an empty hand ready to receive it. And then we seek perfection, meaning that we're trying to be improving, we're practicing to improving. To get better at running, we're testing different shoes, different whatever can be changed or improved to what is in lean manufacturing called removing waste in order to increase performance. So that is the idea in lean manufacturing. The idea is also used in development. Then it's called lean development or agile. This is because this actually comes from the software industry, where they're developing software using lean methods. For some reason, perhaps it was, I'm not, I don't remember exactly, but the Agile Manifesto was written about the same time as the the first lean article. So perhaps that's the reason they did just the same idea. Got two names. Some people call it lean, other people call it agile. In the software industry, it's called agile, and it's also used and as so it's now very popular. And it's the Lean Startup was an influential book from 2011, using this idea how to develop software. You can also use that on startup companies, how to bootstrap companies. So there are 3 steps here. You build something. You just build not necessarily a very big thing, and you test it. Test the product against customers. You measure results. You get the data. You try to learn to redesign or to do, and then get new ideas, and then you build again. Here in sports management, I think it's a very, it could be a way of finding out how to train. It's really about training, I would say, developing or training. So if you want to develop strength, you start easy ways, as your muscles grow, and you improve techniques, and then you just and have somebody and ask the customer, meaning the trainer or something. So there's this quick loop approach to development. Then we have another method called, and then we move on to another method called, another style called Six Sigma, which used to be called, before Six Sigma, it was called Zero Defects, because the purpose of this approach is to make statistically sure that there are as close to possible no defects. So for those of you who have taken who know some statistics, the general idea here, if you look at normal distribution like here, 68% of the data is between from the range of 1 standard deviation, 95% between the range of 2 standard deviations, 99.7% is between 3 standard deviations, which is why this 3 standard deviations is often a very useful measure in the area of doing quality control and things like that. But to make sure there are very few. I don't know exactly how. I don't remember the exact percentage for 6 standard deviations, but it's 99.99999 something of the data is between those 2 ranges. So, like in the case of wanting to get an expert shooter, you want to hit the goal more or less absolutely every only miss 1 in a million times or something like that. So that is this approach. I said that these different these 4 different strategies that could be, it didn't matter, they're just simply 3 different ways of doing it. So it must, but you can also they are also different in the way that they focus on The process approach works on the, like in Lean and Six Sigma, that's more an operational approach. The systems approach through ISO 9000 is more like on a tactical level, and if you want to work with the culture and the organization as a whole, that's a more strategic issue. So Lean Six Sigma focus on processes and thus create results, but they need to be embedded in ISO 9000 to become sustainable, is what Mikkel Wright says in his book from 2011. Yes. Yes. So what? Yes. So what I've spoken about so far is the Lean and Six Sigma approaches. They are on the operational level, and at the bottom of this triangle, the operational level. Lean Six Sigma focus on processes and thus create results, but they need to be embedded in ISO 9000 to become sustainable. So this means that if you work with Lean and Six Sigma, then that's a very good way of getting results. Then you can improve something. But it's very easy that once you have improved a certain process, then you just leave it alone, and then it wanders back to the previous slide. So you need some sort of to control that it stays on this high level of just in time and zero defects. So that's where quality management systems come in quite handy. So and here we see the ISO 9001 model, which follows a plan, do, check, act cycle. So this is how the system of all processes are controlled. So at it starts with the outer limits here is called quality management system, or the context of the organization, the needs and expectations, the customers, and the system itself. Then you need leadership at the center, and then you have this cycle starting with planning on the left. You make risk-based plans on what you're going to do. Then you have the operation, the actual quality control, the production and quality control at the top there, support and operations. Then you have the evaluations, like quality audits and things to make sure everything works right. And then you make, at the bottom, you make decisions on what to improve and what to leave alone before going on to the next turn, which is act, and before making and including what to do in the plans for next year plans and new cycle. This is a very important and popular approach. Approximately, when I looked at approximately 2.1 million ISO 9000 certificated organizations in the world, according to this site. But it's also a controversial approach in some ways, because when people are forced to use or feel they are forced to follow some kind of a system, there's also the risk of people just following the rules without being really engaged in improving quality, just want to show that they're following the standard because that is required of them. So this is the point Seddon made in 1997. At that time, the ISO 9000 standards were less sophisticated, so his arguments were perhaps even better then than they are now. But I think this point, the key ideas are still very good, and it's if you implement the ISO 9000 in a very stupid manner, you just increase bureaucracy and your risk and quality does not necessarily get better, as he points out illustrates in his book, the case studies in the book, and where he even says that even notices in some cases that the quality got worse. In the middle here we have the study by Brunson and Jacobson from 2000, where they talk about the build upon this idea and look at it from even to explain why this is so from a more sociological perspective. That there are, of course, there are the people, the organization, lots of people are interested just to make the standards. I'm more interested in the standards than in the quality. That's also dangerous. We have the quality management people, the heads of the organizations, the ISO consultants, the ISO organization itself, and so on and so on. So we have a large network of people who are interested in just spreading the standard and making people use the standard. So that is a bit dangerous, and that is why we have it on the. But the study is very good, and it gets improved and revised every 7 years or something like that. So that is why Mickelbright on the side argues for the case of for intelligent implementation and or what he calls lean ISO 9001, which means where he argues that as I said on the previous slide, you could use ISO 9000 quality management system for controlling or making sure that the lean efforts are sustainable, and you can use the lean approach for making sure that the ISO 9000 quality management system is follows those principles, the agile, the lean principles, that it doesn't create bureaucracy. On the contrary, it's a way of reducing bureaucracy. Okay, so then I write at the bottom here, management commitment is the single most, yes. So even though ISO, using ISO 9000 that solves an important problem, not everything is solved. As I write at the bottom here, management commitment is the single most critical issue in pursuit of quality. Without it, the program will fail, as many do. Beckford wrote in the second edition of his book from 2002. And that is why we have to address leadership, governance, culture, things like that. That the whole organization, that it fits, that you don't have systems that nobody uses. You have to have the processes and systems don't really work unless you have a culture that supports them. So this is the model of relevance then, at least for us in Europe, the European Quality Award. Here I've chosen to use the initial version, the 1992 version of the TQM excellence model, because I think it's, I mentioned, I showed the latest version on the earlier slide, but I think this is easy to understand. So what we want to achieve here is on the right side. We want the key performance results. We want to make profits, or in public organization, make clients happy, to make sure the society works, things like that. And but we also want people results. We want happy people working in an organization, because that improves results. We want customers. The customers, of course, they are extremely important that they are happy, and we also want to impact society in a positive way. So those are the 4 results areas in the European version of total quality management. And how to achieve this is described on the left side, the so-called enablers, where we have leadership, number 1, and then we have people, policy, strategy, partnership, resources, and processes. Things that could also, that are a bit that could be described as governance. So if you so the way to make sure that you implement total quality management in a sustainable and effective manner, you can do it in this way, starting with Lean Six Sigma and making sure you have the system ISO 9000, and then you have to work with the organization using this model. We do assessments to make and improve the weak points until you by following this model. Still, this is rather interesting. Despite of this, we have that all around 80% of all TQM efforts result in failure. This has been known at least since I first read this number in the book by Peter Senge from 1990, the organizational learning book, Fifth Discipline. But as pointed out as Muskerad here, in more recent shows that the rates are still around, still the same. And also interesting, if you look at these statistics here from Muskerad, the top ones are insufficient education and training, lack of employee involvement, lack of top management support, inadequate resources, deficient leadership and poor management, lack of quality-oriented culture, things like that. All of those things are critical success factors according to the EFQM model. So, in other words, we know, as this book from 1994, we know why TQM fails, and we know what to do about it. There is not only written lots of books and scientific papers and to study what goes wrong and what can be done, but all those findings are embedded in the methods and results on how to implement total quality management. So why does it go wrong then, when everything is known? Well, of course. Well, I think governance and leadership are the key issues here. It boils down to governance and leadership in a way, because if people don't if they know what to do but don't do it, that doesn't help them much. So what we need is governance and leadership. So well, just to how I'm using how these words are used in this context, I refer to Fulop and Ramsey. Governance may be seen in terms of structures and processes that enable oversight, monitoring, and accountability within the system. And leadership also tends to attract multiple definitions, but can be summarized in terms of processes by which individuals or groups are enabled, encouraged, or inspired to achieve agreed goals within a given context. So, in other words, governance has to do with it's the hard science of measurements, structures, systems, while leadership has to do to making sure that we are following the rules. And leadership is pointing in direction where do we want to go, and then encourage people on the more soft aspect of how to do it. And one way of approaching this, which it's a very good book written in 1993, addresses this through what is called critical systems thinking, and that is the idea that we have to use different kind of methods and perspectives depending on but the problem it has is mainly a leadership problem or a governance problem as we work on. So what we are quite sure would never work is, of course, if you have a low focus on governance and low focus on leadership, then there is a low probability of TQM success. On the other hand, if there is a strong focus on both governance and leadership, then we believe there should be a high probability of total quality management success, at least if you follow this approach or this philosophy, which is slightly political in a way, called critical systems thinking. Critical in the sense of the return to those political in the sense that the problem here, as I mentioned on the previous slide, was not that it's quite obvious that governance and leadership is needed, but still they are not sufficiently present, which has to do with culture, politics, and things like that. So let's. I thought it would be interesting to look at the case on how this can be related to sport management, or in this case, event management. This is based on a paper that Gary and I are currently writing. It has to do with the development of, or it's a sort of a reflection on the research that was done, that based on what was called destination learning and development of a framework for assessment of major event fame. So now I think now we're going to use this Plan, Do, Check, Act to illustrate how total quality management, how that might work one way or in the context we're interested in here. So okay, before we enter the Plan, Do, Check, Act circle, we need a decision to start. So and we want to make sure that we think it's it's good to have some kind of evaluation of what is the present status, what is the problem, what we want to improve, and we want to make sure that the people that we are welcome to do this, that there is a team and people are interested in implementing total quality management, or improving the process, improving the system, improving the culture, whatever. So in this particular case, this was done as action research, and from I think it was done from around 2012 to 2022, about 10 years. So it started out with this idea that in order to make these different locations collaborate and to understand the philosophy of total quality management, or actually it was in the version of learning organization, or learning destinations was the word they use in this particular thing, but it's the same. It's just a different word for total quality management, or total quality management environment called learning destinations. The idea here was that why not use academia as a provider of governance and leadership, because as we already noticed, that is a problem. It's a problem to maintain and to design efficient governance, and to make sure we have the leadership, the sufficient leadership to lead this on. But universities, they are known for being neutral, and they are also concerned with accuracy, with quality, and things that would be perfect. So the idea here introduced in this first paper is to assume that academia can operate as a bridge builder in providing governance and leadership for creating successful TQM environment. The bridge. So it's a bridge between the different. So the metaphor here is it works like a bridge between different locations, and as a way of trying to make to create learning organizations or TQM environments. If you notice on the, I don't know if how many people know this particular video game. This is taken from a video game called Bridge Constructor, and the idea in that particular game is to build safe and sustainable bridges within a given budget. So this is perhaps not a this is part of this methodology that Gary and I have developed, that we start with a political tension here. Try to map out the political game in a way. Well, the game. So the game here is that there is a budget, or there are certain restrictions in terms of how much time academia cannot do this. It's not perhaps not a full-time job for academians. They have to. There are costs associated with this, and then the costs have to be limited in certain ways. So we have to be efficient in how it's not just building a bridge, but the bridge has to be built in an efficient manner. So, but everybody got along with this idea. So we also got this, although they got the necessary agreement. So then we went on to the planning stage. Here I have chosen to use the planning is done through leadership in an inclusive, holistic and collaborative manner. It's described in this first paper from 2017. And part of the findings or the outcome of that particular paper is the method itself. The method is not the same as shown here, which is the soft systems methodology by Checkland, but they developed or used what is called a soft system that was very similar, in focusing on the similar. So, and the outcome, the practical outcome of the practical outcome at this stage, working collaboratively, inclusive, holistic, and collaborative, was this framework called the FAME process, the Framework Assessment, what's called Major Events, for major events. And we discussed it, and everybody was very, very happy with this. So that was a strategic outcome of the planning part of the process. Now we have the next step is the doing, and that is to how do we actually implement this FAME process in organizations, testing that over a period. So governance in support of TQM is established through the use of functionalist systems theory. So now this is a slightly different perspective from the soft or interpretive perspective on the previous stage. This is the more functionalist. We're interested in measurable objective results, and this is why I find the second paper from 2022 goes in great detail on how to use different kinds of systems thinking, particularly like this model here called the viable systems model from cybernetics. It was used for creating governance in support of the FAME process. I think this is, it looks very complicated, but just look at it. It is the genius of that particular model, which has been used, has been used and is a part of this critical system thinking approach to TQM, is that you can look at the different aspects of quality management, like I presented earlier in this pyramid model, you can look at it differently, in a more integrated manner through this particular model. The production where things really happen, the planning, or the planning and doing and execution of the events, that is something that deals at the system one. That is the important. That's the key reason, the reason for why we have using this VSM model in the first place. And there it's important to have quality assurance, Pokayaki method, 5S, different sort of very hands-on quality management methods. But in order to make those work, you need to coordinate what's called the system 2 in VSM, the coordination, where you can use things like lean, agile, just-in-time management, Kanban methods, and things like that. And on the level above that, we have a system 3 control, setting goals and measuring that the goals are being reached. There we have the quality control philosophy embedded in Six Sigma, the ISO 9000 auditing and things like that. And above that, there we have the development level. It's concerned with improvement, development and improvement. Like we use the EFQM model for assessing the organization and improving it. We use the root cause analysis, the plan, do, check, act cycle, and things like that. And but at the very top, we have the policy, like committing to the ISO 9000 standard. Which is a way of making sure that you have, if you're certified against it, then you have somebody coming from outside to check whether all of this is actually working. So that is a good policy. In this particular paper, they are not detailing it at this level. This is more like a how it could be done, but they are, instead of ISO 9000, they're using the FAME process as a policy and as at the control level, which is exactly as should be done. Then we have the check stage. Evaluation is done by returning to the bridge constructor game metaphor. So what we see here interestingly is that this bridge, that seemed like a very good idea to use academia as a bridge for despite what is right here, despite the use of top people and compliance with the best theories and practices, the use of academia as bridge for governance and leadership was a failure. And this had to do with political reasons within academia. We could say it could be, in this particular game, it would be represented by what is called the budget on the top of the screen. You have to make sure, in order to play this game called the Bridge Constructor, you're supposed to build a bridge, but you cannot within a constrained budget. And in academia, there are not necessarily there are also economic financial budgets for this kind of work, but there are also other commitments to having papers published in the right outlets and teaching and various things. So in this particular case, there were some challenges in academia that made this bridge collapse, and it was also not possible to make it continue. So it was discontinued, at least in its present shape. So that was So that was not so good, one might say, at least for those researchers who had hoped that this could be used for producing even still more interesting and important papers. That was ended. But in our context, it is interesting to see why to see that even with best intentions and best theories and best practices, governance, and it almost feels like it's not a fact. It's not an absolute fact that governance and leadership will produce TQM success. But on the other hand, the point is not it would not be possible. I don't think it would be possible to create TQM without governance and leadership. The question is more what kind of governance and leadership do we need? So what we believe as a right here, we believe that the study illustrates the need for critical systems leadership, a specific type of. It was already hinted in that direction. What we saw was so-called systems, traditional systems leadership, holistic, collaborative, and so on, but also has to have this critical systems leadership component, which is has to do with certain political skills. And the governance cannot come in from the top by way of academia. It can be supported by academia. I think that's very important, but it has to come bottom up from the organizations, from the bottom levels of the organization, that they take that the ownership of the governance comes from there, and it's gradually bootstrapped. So the VSM governance is bootstrapped in a bottom-up manner. Or to summarize in a different way here, leadership and governance means power, which is extremely important, but not necessarily competence. This was not so. In other, this would perhaps be more relevant in other. This is what I have observed working with implementing total quality management for 30 years. The competence is often the problem, because if you have strong leadership, leaders who really have strong opinion on how things should be done, and you also have governance in terms of very command and control, that does not always mean that total is that could also be a recipe for failure. But what I think is important here is that leadership tends to fade away. There's a lot of often tension when for these fads, like at present there is much interest in the agile organization, so now there could be very the right kind of leadership for many organizations, because leaders are interested to engage in these popular ideas, to perhaps talk about how they are using these ideas at the conferences and meeting with other leaders and so on. So that is that could be a very good idea to frame the total quality management project, not talking about it as total quality management, but rather as an agile. Now we're doing we're building the agile organization, or we're doing an agile transformation or something like that. So that is the lesson from on the bottom there, what I talked about earlier from the stupidity paradox. That is the idea that organizations tend to just follow fads, just do what everybody else are doing, whether it is sensible or not, often choosing very stupid things. Now, I don't think agile is a stupid thing to do, but it's popular, so people just jump on the agile bandwagon regardless of it, often without really understanding what it is. But to make this work, of course, then so we can get the leadership in this way, but we also have to make it work, and then it's important to have people who actually know how TQM works, and to integrate this new language, this new ideas that comes with agile, with the traditional base of knowledge from Lean Six Sigma on the ISO 9000 and the EFQM models. So just use the agile framework for supporting, just like in the previous case where we talked about where the language was learning destinations. That was exactly the same thing. That was the popular word they wanted to use, learning destinations, but in context, in content, it was total quality management. So and then we have what we call, what Gary and I have chosen to call black belt leadership, because leadership is we have the leadership on the getting top management involved, interested in the ideas, but then we have to trickle down leadership to get people to actually understand and lead their own work. This is how we think something like this this fame case could have worked if we got the people on the floor, the individuals, the workers, to take responsibility for their own personal leadership, personal management, personal vision, personal leadership, personal management. So making people, everybody in the organization, to run their own personal, individual plan, do, check, act cycles. This is what Mike Rother argues in his book Toyota Kata from 2011, which is the foundation from what we call black belt leadership, where not necessarily only this PDCA leadership is key. It's most important, obviously, but we are open for different kinds of situational leadership inspired by this karate metaphor. So what we want to do, what we suggest, is to develop competence from within by utilizing, and we also want to use the competence from within by utilizing recursive nature of the VSM. And what we mean by that is that, but every component in this governance structure contains an exact image of this same model within it itself. So if we blow up this piece called how system 1A interacts with environment A, or the 1A leadership interacts with the A workers, this could be blown up and described in as another one. How this particular unit functions as the same kind of model, and by going down this sort of Russian doll structure within structure, we finally reach the individual worker, and there we want to make sure that that each team and each person is not only a follower but also a leader in himself. So this is how we believe is this is how we believe that total quality management should depend on on governance, and in this way we believe it could be a fact. In this way, total quality management need for governance and need for governance and leadership is not a myth, as we have almost believed it to be, but may actually be a fact if it is done in this way, which is compliant with how Johnson Rosen had been arguing for a very long time in what he described as a development from management science or scientific management to workers' science, or what is called community operational research, which accidentally also happens to be the topic where Gary is one of the world's leading experts. So thank you very much for this presentation.